D minor 7,
right,
flat 5, 7, D minor 7, flat 5.
Do you guys want to talk about some music theory? Woo! Yeah, you're here for music theory.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Do we want to go down and introduce ourselves?
Sure, we'll even put up this little slide.
Wow.
Wow, it's like we prepared. Not really, but we prepared. So I am Sab Irene. I do video game saxophone stuff, and I teach. I, for some reason, learn instruments for fun. I don't know why. That's kind of wacky. Yeah.
Yeah, no one learns music for fun, Sab, so that's really weird of you.
That's why we're all not here.
Yeah. I'm FamilyJules. I've done way too many videos on YouTube, which are like metal remixes of video games. I worked on the Crypt of the Necrodancer soundtrack, and a bunch of other nerdy stuff.
I'm Insane in the Rain. I'm the blue guy over there. I make video game jazz arrangements, so taking your favorite video game songs and mashing them up with the likes of Snarky Puppy, Miles Davis, basically anything in that spectrum. And I currently attend the Berklee College of Music, and I'm...
Ooh. I don't attend Berklee, but...
Good, you're saving yourself some money.
I'm 8-Bit Music Theory, and I make videos talking about music theory.
He's like the only qualified person up here to talk about this. So yeah, how many of you guys like know music theory, like have music theory understanding before coming here?
Wow.
Then why aren't you up here? What are you doing here? Thank you. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
That's the true problem, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, this is the how to get subscribers.
This whole thing is a front.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So we thought it would be really interesting to help teach people who don't really know much about music theory, the basics of it using video game music, because we figure, that's why you guys are here. Yeah. So the idea of this panel in particular is we want to get you guys up to speed to understanding chord progressions, because if you want to understand the basic fundamental of music theory is that all music really is just tension and release, and how to manipulate that to get the feelings that you want out of the music that you're doing. There's many ways that you can do that. And only one of the ways is chord progressions and stuff. So we're going to try to get everybody up to speed in this room to be able to understand those chord progressions and maybe utilize them when you guys go home. So I will do the basic fundamental music theory understanding. So please stay with me. This stuff just goes over your head.
Time for remedial video game music theory.
Remedial theory lesson.
Yeah, I'm going to try my best. We're all going to try our best to help you guys understand this if you don't. So what are the things that make us feel things? Harmony. How do the notes work together? If you ask somebody what a harmony is, someone might say, like Jacob Collier did that Wired video about what harmony is, and
on the 5 different levels and stuff. Yeah,
and went up to like Herbie Hancock.
It's like when two notes play together, they sing together.
Well, yeah. So like the interesting thing of that is like from the absolute basic of like 2 notes played together. Yeah, that's not incorrect. That's a harmony. But like it continues into, multiple notes working together to create not just nice sounds, but bad sounds, sad sounds, dissonant sounds, like those are all harmonies and stuff. So just how the notes work together. Tempo is just how fast the music, what the pulse is, I think everyone would understand that. And instrumentation is a big one that like, I feel like a lot of, like some of the questions that I've given this panel a few times now at many different conventions. And one of the most common questions I get is, how does it relate to the music with it's kind of hard to explain because like you can know all of everything. Well, you can't know everything about music theory, but you can know a lot and still not understand that like 2 instruments playing a harmony can sound completely different because of their timbres, their feelings and stuff. So that's just a whole other side of it, that's important to understand. But again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the chords and stuff. So what the frickin' heck is music theory? So this is where'd you get this definition, Carlos?
I probably just Googled it and picked the first thing that came up.
Google says that is the studies of practices and possibilities of music.
I like the word possibilities here. I think it's a really good description of what...
It's very Reading Rainbow.
Music theory is possibility.
It can be anything you want.
You can do anything with music theory. Except cure cancer. An explanation of why music creates tension and resolution. I really like that one because that's really kind of like what makes us feel things, when we kind of have a feeling of like movement, like we get attached to the music, be it like something that's catchy, like something, and then it moves us somewhere, and it does that using whether or not the music simulates some kind of like, resolution or doesn't, like prolonging the resolution. You kind of do that by tension, and then you release the tension. So that's kind of how you feel like things are moving. And guidelines for writing music that makes people feel things. Again, kind of what we're talking about. Okay, here we
Basics
go.
time.
Crash course.
All right, I want everybody to really focus here.
Because this is super important.
This is a piano. On the piano, there are these white things called keys and these black things that are also called keys. When you go to the right, the notes pitches get higher. All right, somebody wanted me to start over. When you go to the right, the pitches get higher. Someone in this room might not know this, so you got to start at the absolute beginning. And if you go to the left, the pitches get lower. Can you get more volume on that? Can you guys hear that?
Can we get more volume on the examples? From the
Can I get some more on the monitor, please?
They really need to hear the piano scale going down, so let's bump it up.
Yeah, dude,
the louder it is, the better it sounds.
that's music. If I do say so myself, that's true music. Anyway, everyone got that? Everyone following?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah?
Awesome.
Pitches. Yeah, so the difference between notes and pitches is notes is a notation of the pitch. The pitch is the actual
Sound.
ethereal, wiggly sound that you hear, the wiggly air that you hear, which is all sound really is. Time signature. Does somebody else want to take this?
Well, all music is just subdivisions of things.
Right.
I think.
Wow.
And music is math.
We're getting too deep.
This is too
as
complicated.
you said, music is wiggly air.
Yes.
And these are how we define the points in time where things happen.
Yes.
And we start with whole notes and just generally divide in half or by 3, which are easy divisions that humans can understand. So we move from whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, and all the way down to the hemi, demi, semi, quaver.
No one
So what that means is, I need a way to kind of understand when you're looking at this, when you want to know the actual pulse of the music, is those two notes at the beginning, the two numbers at the beginning that look kind of like a fraction. The way to read this is how many of what? How many is the top of what is the bottom? 4 is like, that's the standard. Like 4/4 means that there are 4 quarter notes per measure. That's kind of hard to understand right off the bat, but if you think about it as eighth notes, which is half the half of a quarter note is an eighth note, you'll actually see that if there are 4 eighth notes, that would say 4/8. So that 4 actually applies to like 1/4, which is a quarter.
When you're trying to define rhythm and tempo, you want to think, can you dance to this? Because sometimes people will hear a subdivision and be tapping like this, and it's like, can you dance to that? Probably not, so you want to think like bigger beats and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love to dance to Ganondorf Battle. 2316, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So all that top measure means is that there are 4 quarter notes that make up one measure of music. The measure is just how we organize it, Time is a construct, so.
Social construct.
Anyway, so wait, go back.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say, so like you can divide that, like that circle takes up the time of 4 quarter notes. So that's why that measure works. It's 4 quarter notes of time. The next one is 2 half notes. So one of those notes in a measure would be 2/4. Does everyone understand that? Or 1/2, 1 half note. For the best way of understanding this is this third one, where there is actually 4 quarter notes in that measure. So that's exactly like if every single beat is accented. That's what you get. So then the one under that is if you can subdivide these. So each of those notes take up the time of, so 2 of those notes take up the time of 1 quarter note because they're eighth notes. So you can fit 8 eighth notes in a measure of 4/4. All right, everyone following me? Good, because we're gonna get weird later on. So it's gonna be fun. All right, somebody want to take scales?
You remember how the piano played up the cue that Carlos played earlier? Beautiful. That's how you would notate that using sheet music. Sheet music is just a way to, put down on paper symbols that a musician can read and make music with, which you probably have all seen sheet music before.
Has anyone not seen sheet music? Because it's right there. Okay, so yeah, and also like, so we, if we're in the key of C, these are the notes, we call them diatonic notes. These are the notes that are typically
that
naturally occur in the key of C. So when you say I am in the key of C major, typically you're gonna be using these notes. You don't have to. You know, you can do whatever you want. No one's gonna sue you. And sometimes it sounds better to kind of bend the rules a little bit. But you know, we need some order. You know, we need some structure, and that structure is if we're in the key of C major, these are kind of the notes that we're gonna be looking at. Also, it's important to note that treble and bass clefs have different notes. If you aren't confused enough already. So we just shift all the notes. So a C on the treble clef is that first ledger line. That's what that little line through the note's called, below the staff. A C, an octave below that, is on the second space from the bottom on the bass clef. An easy way, if you guys have trouble with the bass clef, is either thinking that the line between the two dots, excuse me, I need more water. The line between the two dots on the bass clef is F. They actually call that the F clef. Thank you so much. Or all the spaces go all cows eat grass for the letters. So A, C, E, G. But everyone knows, you know, every good boy deserves fudge or whatever.
Every good boy does fine.
Every good bird does fly.
Every good boy deserves fuck. What? I said frick. Next slide. Go to the next slide. Sorry, heir to the 8-bit music theory. Okay. Wait, did I just describe this?
Vaguely, but now we got minor.
Oh,
Yeah, there's major keys.
No one likes minors.
There's minor keys.
Hey, watch it.
So yeah, that was a major scale. We kind of, everyone always says like, this is the happy scale, this is the sad scale. And I mean, that's a good way of kind of, you know, understanding a basic fundamental of it.
But it's a lot more nuanced and shaded than that.
Yeah, so you can, depending on the ways that you use the notes, you can get more feelings out of it. But generally a good idea is like, that's happy, right? You think happy things, right? Puppies, unicorns, not that one. That one's like, you know,
it's like a sad puppy.
Plague, you know.
Oh boy.
Well, not that dark. That's like harmonic minor. Right? Yeah, so that's kind of a natural minor.
Someone just died listening to that.
Did they?
Wow.
Where are they? Get them an ambulance. Did you die? Were you already dead? Like inside? That doesn't count. All right. So yeah, everyone kind of understanding where we're going here. You. Hello. Yeah. So everyone kind of understand that. So that's the kind of. Oh right. Key signature. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So C major, we can kind of notate what the C minor scale is by lowering the third note, the sixth note, and the seventh note by one semitone. We call that flatting the note. When you move a note down a semitone, you refer that to as flatting the note. When you move it up a semitone, that means you are sharping it. So if you ever see a note on the staff and you see a sharp in front of it, that means it's that note sharp. Those are the black keys on the keyboard. Don't worry about that. All right, so you can also notate this by putting the accidentals, which is what they're unfortunately called, at the beginning of the measure. Yeah, who named it the accidental?
On accident.
It should be the intentional.
Guess so. Yeah.
The intentionals.
Intentional Yeah, I mean, seriously, like I feel like that, like it implies that it's wrong.
Yeah, it implies that it's already not.
It's really weird.
They're the notes that you're gonna mess up and make an accident on. Maybe that's why they're called accidentals.
There's no such thing as an accident as long as you don't look like you make
Okay, Bob Ross.
So,
Fake it till you make it.
happy little accidentals. All right. All right. So these are different. I don't know why I can just see it right here.
Yeah.
I'm like breaking my neck over here.
Here, I'll tilt it.
I don't know. I've been talking a lot. Does somebody else want to talk about it?
Sure. So with chords and Roman numerals, so we just talked about our nice little C major scale. Da, 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 da. So with that, we can build in thirds where they kind of look like little pancakes, I call them, these like stacked notes. And you build to make sure that every note fits within that nice C major scale. You're not adding any of our accidentals or oopses. And it just naturally has these occurring qualities that kind of carry that same like happy or sad kind of sound with like, and that's why uppercase, the Roman numerals are major, which sound happier, and then the minor ones are the lowercase, and then the one with the little circle is just weird.
So that's a diminished chord. So when you're working with that's your diminished one. So a basic tertiary chord, which is what we call these 3-note chords, tertiary, those of you guys who studied Latin, is a chord built on where you kind of skip one diatonic note. So in this case, the C major scale, or the C major chord rather, is the notes from the scale C, E, and G. So you skip one note between that and you get a C major chord. And as long as you're diatonic, that's always going to be a major chord. So if you're in any key and you just follow the scale and skip every note, you're always going to end up, if you do it in this way. So like what's that? That's like a whole step and a whole step will always be like a major chord. Everybody kind of learns this stuff a little bit differently. So this panel is kind of difficult to put on just because almost no two people pick up on all of this stuff exactly the same way. So some people think about these stuff in terms of numbers. Like scale degrees would be like, if we call C1, D2, E3, you would call this chord 1, 3, 5. Some people like that better. Some people like the visual representation of like blocks. So the most important way to like really solidify this stuff in your head is figure out which way makes the most sense to you, and also to play this on your instrument. Or sing it if you don't play an instrument. So if any of this stuff confuses you, like keep a mental note of what that was that we were talking about. Maybe like looking it up on YouTube or watch
Ben's videos.
Ben's videos because he explains it the best out of anybody in the world. But the most important thing to keep in mind for this panel in particular is the chords in the C major scale section here. Because we're going to be describing a lot of the examples that we show with Roman numeral analysis. Just like I said with note numbers, scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then you go back to 1 because that's your octave. We can call the chords that. So you guys might have seen these Roman numerals and be like, what the heck is that? Like, what this is literally going up C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And every chord that's diatonic to that scale. And we notate that with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 because we don't need to be in the key of C to still understand numbers. If you're in G, you can just say 1, 3 and know that, okay, so that's G and B. And then you can just kind of like do the other work later. But still you can still apply a chord progression that you hear in one song to a completely different key, which is kind of like what we hope that you guys can do. Like, so if you're sitting in front of a keyboard, do we have a picture of the keyboard again? And you just play C, E, G. That's pretty easy, right? You just skip white notes. Now, if you were to just like play those notes and then just go up one on each one, you get exactly those chords that we were showing you before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So even if you don't know one of the songs that we play later, you can just apply those numbers at home, not have to worry about any like black keys or any weird fingerings or anything, and still kind of get the same feeling as long as you understand Roman numeral analysis. So that was do you guys kind of understand that? Kinda, okay. Yes? Yes? Okay. Or yes? Don't worry, we're getting to the fun stuff soon. You guys just gotta understand this stuff. Is anyone totally lost? Raise your hand, be brave. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was kidding. Thank you for your honesty.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're going to be, not a lot of people raise their hands. Like a lot of people
that's good.
Yeah, it's good. So like, if you do have any questions, we'll be hanging out. I mean, I think we're all here all weekend, right? Are you here all weekend?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so just come up to us and ask us. We love talking about this stuff because it really validates our education. It really does. Okay.
Yeah. Cadences.
Cadences. Okay, so
this is the meat.
What?
This is the meat of the presentation. Sorry, you're a vegetarian.
Yeah, I am a vegetarian.
It's the bulk.
Yeah.
This is the black bean, pinto bean, and kidney bean.
Shut up.
Of your presentation. So the different cadences are different types of beans.
Think about cadence, and Carlos, shut up. So cadences are the think of it as like the musical punctuation of the music. That's the best way that I've heard to. It's kind of how a musical statement comes to end or doesn't. The most common one you hear will be the authentic cadence. Which kind do you have? Do you have you got
A
a pack?
perfect.
I got a
do you have
pack.
or
You got a
an
pack?
I got a pack.
IAC?
So that's a perfect authentic cadence. You might hear that at the end of a song if it's an extremely cheesy song.
Like Bach.
Yeah, like Bach. Bach was a cheesy guy. No. What that essentially is we go from that 5 chord, in the case of C, that would be the G chord, and then go to C. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And that is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of the panel. That's tension. So that chord creates this tension. It's just like, if you're in the context of C and you hear that chord's like, where are we? Where are we going? I mean, you know where you're going, but you don't feel resolved and like until you hear that chord. So we milk that as far as we can to simulate tension and release. So
Play the C chord.
whoa, what was that?
Whoa.
Jumping ahead.
Everyone's confused. So a pack is a perfect authentic cadence. All that means is we went from a 5 to 1, but the root note is in the soprano line. It's the top note, and that gives us the fullest feeling.
True.
Right?
It would be
That we have
the
arrived.
top note goes da da 2
So it
1.
either
Does it?
it can go either
it goes from 2 to 1.
Yes.
or it could go
Goes
7 to 1.
can't it?
Yeah.
Or-
I think it's
They're
just
weird rules.
wow, music theory arguments.
That's why you're all here.
Yeah. Even you can argue about music theory. This is all you need to. All right. So yeah, I think it's just like you end up the highest note being like the root note, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of gives you since the highest note is usually like the most prominent note that you hear, that's what gives you the fullest feeling of like a resolution. All right. More cadences, because that's like the most basic.
That's the basic one.
Basic one. All right, so a plagal cadence. This is the Jesus Amen cadence. Yay, Jesus. So, so this is actually just going from 4 to 1. Same idea. We just go to the 4 chord to 1. Any key you do this in, it's gonna sound like Jesus. So, no, half cadences are where we can start messing with people. I'm all like self-conscious about swearing now because you're kids. This is usually a R-rated music theory panel.
PG
A half cadence is when you kind of do the reverse. You go from a resolution chord and then end on a tense chord, like 1 to 5, and then goodbye.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you. Want an encore? Play it again.
Yeah. Please.
Didn't that suck? All right. Thank you.
That's better.
There we go.
All right,
Okay.
That's a half cadence. So if you ever see that in music, that's how you would describe it, is if it ends on a 5 chord because the composer was a dick. That's a half cadence. Deceptive cadences are fun because this is how we start prolonging the music. I mean, there was some really full of himself composer, I can't remember who it was, who said that all music is just 5 to 1. Essentially, just I can't remember what it was. I mean, if you break it down to as far as
That's like saying all music is wiggly air. You're like, okay, kind of.
yeah, technically the truth. Yeah. So deceptive cadence is cool because you can use a chord
To lie.
Well, I wouldn't say lie. Wow, Jesus.
Deceive.
Deceive. That's,
Same thing.
I guess, yeah, technically the truth. You can use another chord that almost sounds like the chord you're going to, but with one note different to imply that we're not done. You know, you thought you were done, but oh no.
Oops.
You know? Yeah. So
Where do you think that goes?
What? Oh.
Right?
But you're wrong. Ooh. Isn't that nice though? So yeah, so the idea of this, which we didn't really touch on, is that the reason the 5 chord has so much tension to the 1 chord is it has it's diatonic to the key, but has the notes the furthest away. So there's, what is it? It's like all 3 notes are different from the one.
No, there's a common tone between 1 and 5. But so the thing with
Right, so the 5 is in it, but the other 2 notes are different. They're far away from it. So that kind of creates a tension back towards a chord that's like the root chord, the 1.
Right.
Now, we call these chords that we go to in a deceptive cadence, these are tonic substitutes. A tonic, do we talk about that stuff? Chord function? Yeah, that's the next one.
Yeah, that's the next one.
You can go to that one. I mean, yeah, so harmonic function's really, really cool because for me, this was like a huge breath of fresh air because you first get into music and you look at a piano, you're like, what? There's like 88 notes there. Like, how does anybody know what to do with that? But then somebody tells you, it's like, well, there's only 12, you know? And then you just, you know, they kind of just like have octaves of that. It's like, all right, well, that's a lot less than 88. So like, I guess I can kind of figure that out, right? So then it's like, okay, actually there's like 7 notes. And then everyone's between them, like you only sometimes play them to kind of, if you want to be a jazz musician.
You want to be hip?
Yeah. So like, wow, 7 notes, that's not too many. But then you can break it down further into 3 different notes, essentially, 3 different categories of notes. And these have different functions within the key. And you can break that into 3, if you think about them all as chords, you can break those exact same chords into the same kind of function.
Right.
So tonic there's only one tonic, and that's the 1 chord. In the key of C, the tonic chord is C major. In the key of D, the tonic chord is D, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to be your home. That's the chord that's going to feel like, I've arrived at the Shire. We're here, you know, like
Shire.
Yeah, you know, we're yeah. So that's the chord that's always home. That's the tonal center is what I feel like it's most commonly called.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to skip subdominant. Dominant chords are tense chords. They're chords that are far away and create tension towards that one chord. And that is going to be the 5 chord and the 7 chord. When you play a 5 chord or a 7 chord, that's going to, those guys they were like, no, I'm out. The 5 and the 7 chord are the ones that really make you want to hear that 1 chord, right? Stop. Please. Thank you. So now the purpose, so that's 5 and 7. So now we've covered 3 different chords, 1, 5, and 7. Now 4 and 2 work as subdominant chords. These are chords that typically are played before the dominant chords. So these work really well if you want to, you know, set up the tense chord. So that would be a 4 chord, or no, wait.
Yeah, he went 4.
This is the 4.
4, and then 5, and then 1. So, man, this is actually a really complicated like program setup he has here. I'm actually really impressed. he wrote all of these out in Reaper.
No, I wrote them in Sibelius and I scored the MIDI.
Oh my God! Why do you do this to yourself? Anyway, so then there's 2 notes still. There's 3 and 6. These are tonic substitutes. These are chords that you can go to instead of tonic to create that deceptive cadence and kind of prolong that gratification.
Make them wait some more.
Yeah, screw them. Don't give them what they want. Do you have an example of it? So now that you guys understand that, you play deceptive cadence again. Is this 1, 4, 5, 6?
This will be 4. This will be 4, 5, 6.
4, 5, 6. But see how that almost kind of sounds like it resolved, but didn't really? That's because 2 of those notes in that 6 chord
Are the same
in 1. It's just 1 note that's different. That's why you feel it. Like Adam Neely did a video that was like about. I'm the biggest Adam Neely fan in the world. About how like our ears perceive this better than our brain does, and what it does is when we hear this, like our ear can kind of like translate this all, but like by the time it hits our brain, like I mean a lot of the actual like intricate details are lost generally, so you just perceive it like this way, which is kind of cool. Your ears are smarter than your brain.
This is the most important slide of the presentation.
Yes.
Please remember it. We'll quiz you at the end.
This enough.
Word for word.
Yeah, it's all about tension and release. Where, you know, Carlos made the example the first time we gave this panel that the 1 chord is like your home. And then the 4 chord is like you're going out to the store. And then the 5 chord is like you almost are about to get in a crash on your way home, and then you get home. I don't know why he chose that, but I mean, it gives the imagery of, you know, you're going somewhere a little bit further and then there is some instability, but ultimately you will get home in the end.
I think it's about time we get into some video game music.
Yeah,
though.
let's go.
Everyone's already bored. Everyone's falling asleep by now. You guys want to? You guys like video games? No? Yeah, that's the right answer. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So we're gonna actually show you some cool examples of chord. So you guys understand chord Roman numeral analysis, right? So it's just kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We can start messing with those if we want to, but that's the basic structure of that. We can apply that to any key. So just think about these in terms of just like up the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up the keyboard just like that. And it will completely just like it's such a better framework for kind of understanding how to manipulate music in the way to create tension and release. So, I mean, of course, rather than having to learn all of this stuff for every individual key, it's just like it would take forever. So
Let's check out the example of this. We've talked about the 4-5-1 quite a bit.
yes, 4,
It's
5,
the
1.
pumpkin spice latte. It's the most common cadence you will ever hear.
But no barista wants to make it for you.
Exactly.
So here's Green Greens from Kirby, which is a fantastic game that exemplifies some basic music theory concepts.
Ignore this one for now. But then, so you guys know Kirby personally?
He pink.
Yeah. Okay. He knows Kirby personally. That's pretty cool. Wow. What? So the idea that this is like one of the most basic ones that you'll ever hear that really kind of drives home this idea of cadence of chords that give you the context of tension and release is that when you hear this 4 chord, it sets up the 5 chord, and then that 5 chord sets up the 1 chord again. So listen to this again. Here, do 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 do. That right, that note is going to be the 4 chord. Feel that chord, then feel the 5 chord, then feel the 1 chord. It's a little bit fast, but can you guys kind of feel that? And then 5, 1. So that's kind of the idea. You guys kind of understand how that works? So listen to this in your free time when you listen to the radio. I mean, no one listens to the radio when you listen to Spotify, and try to like pick it out. It is actually a skill that's really important for musicians to be able to hear cadences, to be able to hear like, oh, that was a deceptive cadence. And the trick is keeping it to yourself and not trying to impress your friends with that knowledge. They really don't care if you're like, ah, yes, that's a French augmented 6th chord. Nobody cares, dude. All right.
So earlier we talked about the 4-5. We talked about the difference between major keys and minor keys, and it's important to note that the 4-5-1 can also happen in a minor key. If you look at the bottom of that slide, everything is the same. It's 4-5-1 except it's just in lowercase, which means it's a minor chord. So this is Gourmet Race from Kirby.
You guys can kind of feel how that chord sets up 5, 5 sets up 1. You're gonna hear it if you're really organizing that in your heads right now, and like you really understand that, you're gonna start hearing it everywhere, and it's really, really cool because then you can the most important thing about learning music theory isn't about impressing your friends or your mom because they don't care, is that you can use the stuff that you hear, you can analyze that stuff, and then steal it. And then use it in your own music in a different key so then they can't sue you. Woo! All right. That's why you're all here. Here's another example.
This is a classic example of the 4-5-1 followed immediately by the deceptive cadence. So you can hear the contrast between how it sounds resolved in the first 4 bars, and then it leaves a little bit more to be desired in the next 4. So that one's the 1 chord. That one feels resolved, but it happens again. It's slightly different.
Cool. Everyone got that? Cool. Let's keep going. More fun stuff.
So that's the 4-5-1. That's kind of the basic, fundamental harmonic building block that everyone learns first. Like if you take a music theory class in college or whatever, that's the first thing you'll learn. But what's cool about, especially looking at like video game music, is that there's kind of like video game music has its own sort of harmonic vocabulary of different chord progressions that are really common that aren't necessarily as common in other styles. And one of those chord progressions is the 1-flat-7-1, which I guarantee you probably recognize that.
Yeah, it's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, true. Not that it's uncommon in other styles necessarily, but
And the idea of that is that typically you would take that in like the key of C major, that chord would be a diminished chord. The diminished chord we talked about. I didn't even explain that, did I?
No, we vaguely.
A diminished chord is essentially
super minor.
Yeah, it's
super minor. Very, very minor.
That's a really good way of putting it.
The diminished chord is when you take the fifth note, when that normally would be whatever note it is, and you flat that note, then you'll get a diminished chord. If you sharp that note, it's augmented. So that's all you need to know.
So in a major key, the seventh note, the chord built on the seventh note of the scale is naturally a diminished chord.
Right.
And that's what makes it so satisfying to resolve from 7 to 1. It's the same way that it's satisfying to resolve from 5 to 1. But in this chord progression, the seventh scale degree is flattened and taken down a half step. So in the key of C, it would be a B flat chord, B flat major, moving to C major. Yep. And it
has a very like adventurous and heroic sound to it.
Yeah.
Right.
You hear it a lot in like adventure games.
For example, like Pokemon.
Here's the feeling. So that's not diatonic, but it sounds good.
Still sounds good.
A weird music trick found by a mom. It's okay. All right.
So another good example of this is the Chocobo Song from Final Fantasy, which is the exact same key and is a little faster, but uses the flat 7 in a very like heroic and whimsical sense, and also mixes it in with the 4-5-1 that we heard earlier. You'll hear some of the 4-5-1 we talked about earlier.
Oh, hey, I remember him. I hear you all saying.
That's such a good example because, the two sections are both just, setting up tension and then immediately resolving it to the one chord. And they just do it in slightly different ways. And it has like such an audible effect on the character of the character of both sections is so different from each other. Not so different that they don't work together, but it's just such a good example of how those two types of chord progressions evoke slightly different feelings.
So some of you guys might ask, like, how do you play over it when the chords kind of change? That's kind of like where modes and stuff kind of come into play, where modes are just scales that you just change notes depending on whatever. And I actually do so I've done this panel at MomoCon,
PAX East.
all like both PAXs and stuff, and we kind of want to do a Music Theory 102 where we talk more about modes and scales next time because we think that would be really interesting and kind of show that in like Song of Time being in Dorian and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, if you guys come next year, hopefully we'll have something along those lines too if you're interested in that. So
I can talk about this.
you want to talk about Mario Cadence?
Yeah. Well, you think that you're the qualified Mario
I've
expert
never played
here?
Mario before.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you, Mario. So this we call this the Mario Cadence, and you'll
Because they use it in Final Fantasy.
yes.
I'm not kidding. Watch.
So flat 6, flat 7, 1. We have more borrowed chords from the minor key because we're kind of doing that same thing where we're altering the qualities of the chords like we were before, and it makes it sound totally different. So they don't necessarily fit in our tonic key, but it creates a really cool effect. Like you wouldn't think that didn't sound diatonic. You're just like, I did it.
Yeah.
And then this
The
is
same thing happens in the other game.
What?
Futurism. Yeah, I see some of you guys like, oh my God, that is the same song.
That's what you did the thing.
Yeah, it's cool. If you want a song that sounds like that, just
I'm gonna play them
Feel
again.
Do that.
I'm playing them again, but in the same key this time.
Oh.
That's why the stuff is like really cool to learn, because you can evoke these same emotions by just understanding the chord progressions.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Okay. I gotta talk about this one. This is my all-time favorite negative harmony, negative
get
5
out.
chord progression.
God, I hate the fact that, like, you know, 1 or 4 minor 4 1 comes up and people in the crowd are like, oh yeah, woo, yeah, nerds.
No, if you're that kind of person, you are my kind of person. The 4 minor is by far my favorite, or progressing from the 4 minor to 1 is one of my favorite chord progressions ever. To me, it feels like a nice hug at the end of a song. And no. wait, go back. Wait, wait,
Wrong.
okay, here we go. Didn't that feel right? That felt right to me. So it has such a gentle ending to it, and one of the best examples of this is in the end credits of Super Mario 64, where
very
Koji Kondo
end.
waits until the very, very end of the game to drop this emotional bomb on us. Okay, it's coming. I'm gonna cry a little bit.
That last chord is no different than a 1 chord. It's the chord before it. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh, man,
That is the Mario, Mr. Mario himself.
I have some feels in my stomach now.
I sure don't. I speedrun this game. I'm so over it.
A similar thing, it happens in National Park from Pokemon
Yes,
Gold and
I love
Silver.
this.
Yes.
That song
It's
is my
emotional.
instant jazz stank face chord.
Stank face, yeah. What? How are we doing on time? Can we talk about negative harmony?
No.
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 We have 19 minutes.
We have 19. Oh, do you want to quickly describe why the
Okay, how many of you have heard of negative harmony
No,
before?
don't do this. Don't do this. Get out.
All I'm going to say is that
you have like 10 seconds.
All I'm going to say is that in negative harmony, if you apply the concepts for the 5 chord, the 5 chord is negatively the polar opposite of the minor 4 chord. So they both have the same resolving function to the tonic.
Yeah, which is really kind of interesting. That's why I'm sure it works for other reasons, but that's why it works on almost like a practical level.
Yeah.
Anyways. All right, you guys ready to
Throw everything out the
Advanced.
window that we just taught you.
Yeah. Ignore everything? We're about
Yeah.
to screw everything up here.
All right.
All right. Oh, actually, I want to talk about that. Somebody else.
Oh,
That's-
Ben.
What is this about? Secondary
You just did a
dominance.
video
So
on this.
when things get really interesting is a lot of songs, like maybe most songs ever written, will not stay in one key for the whole song. That's just, it's been done. That's old hat. We've been in this key. Let's branch out a little. So what'll happen pretty frequently is you'll take the 5 chord from another key and stick it into your first key and maybe have it resolve to its 1 chord, and then you'll go back to your home key. And that's called a secondary dominant.
Which is it's the one in the box right there where there's a dual analysis of that chord. That's an A7. So this is Tress's theme from Octopath Traveler. Best girl.
You also get some nice minor 4s too.
So we're about to change key.
So this is starting to kind of think outside the box a little bit, where the reason that sounds so smooth is that we know what key we're going to, and the way that we do it, the way we get to that key, is we figure out what the 5th chord in that key is, and we just put it right. But it's not necessarily in the key, but it doesn't really matter. When we hear where something's going, we accept it. If we hear something weird, we'll be like, that's really weird. But then if you go to the 1 chord from that 5 chord, even if it's just like completely random notes at first, you understand it, you accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So
That
that's
kind of goes back to the tension and release thing.
Exactly.
Like any amount of tension will fly if the level of release matches the amount of tension. You know what I mean?
Or doesn't. I mean,
Doesn't.
yeah.
If you want to if you want to play jazz, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do that.
We're classical musicians and they're jazz musicians, so it's always very fun to try to organize this panel.
Jules gets mad at me for labeling the chords wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
And I said, dude, yours are wrong.
Yeah, last night you said something about it was just like, oh yeah, that's like a flat 6 chord
In a minor key.
Yeah,
in a
we're
minor
just like,
key. I was
no.
just like, I'm like sitting there because like the 6 is like flat in a minor key. I'm like, is there a quarter tone in between 5 and 6 that I just don't know about? And I was like, oh no, Carlos is just being a dick. Okay, so here's another example of the secondary dominant from an example you might have heard earlier.
What?
If you were still awake. Good old 4-5-1. Ya boy.
Here's the fancy part.
So we call that process of going to a new key tonicizing. So in that case, we've tonicized that. Actually, we kind of don't.
Well, it's more just a tonization of the relative minor briefly.
Yeah, it kind of almost feels like that A minor is now home, but not really, because then it's the common chord. So that even though that chord is like, we've tonicized that chord is still diatonic to the key of C. So we still pretty much hear that in the same range of this song. That's why we don't really feel like, whoa, we're in a whole nother key. So that's kind of why that feels that way.
So up until now, pretty much everything we've seen has been in 4/4. So now we're going to take that 4/4 and turn it into 13/16.
Yes.
Everyone can count 13, 16.
Yeah. So you guys remember how we read time signature, right? How many of what? So 13 16th notes per measure in this song. And you don't really hear it. What's cool about this, well, first let's hear it. So this song is in 13 16. So the reason why you can still kind of you okay over there? The reason why you can still kind of follow this is like if we took away 1/16th note, or wait, sorry, I didn't do that math right, did I?
No, you did.
Oh, I did. Okay, so if you take away 1/16th note out of this measure, what you have is 12/16, which you can simplify that down to what, like 3/4?
3/4.
Essentially, which, yeah, that's fine. So what we're actually really kind of hearing is we're hearing 3/4 with just another 16th note in there. And you just kind of, I mean, it's a 16th note, you kind of just like let it go. So like now try counting this. We'll talk about something like Isn't that cool? You don't even really hear it, but like that's what it is. It's except that one measure of what's that, 5/16?
There's a lot of 5/16.
It's so cool. Okay. All right, you guys confused yet? You will be.
Yay.
Go.
Next one.
Wow, my name's Koji Kondo. I sure can count really fast. So what does this mean?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
23 16th notes to a measure. Let's hear how that sounds. Not a lot of people bobbing their heads. A few people. A lot of people like, wait, 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 So what's really cool about sheet music, and I grew up on tabs, so this was something that I didn't really understand until way later, is that the standard notation actually shows us how to count this. And it does that by flagging these segments. So it flags this, the way we can count this, because like the trick with once you go above 9, the numbers that you're counting now have multiple syllables. And that doesn't really work on beats. You can't be like, 13, 14, 50, like it's too hard. So what you want to do is you want to break it into segments where they can all kind of be single syllabic
Yeah.
words. So in this case, we can count this as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 groups of
Can we
3.
get that one more time?
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
That would be about that speed. Yeah, thank you. I went to music school. They teach you how to count. So and you can see that. That's the way it's broken up into flags there. So now that you guys heard it, think about it that way. 3 groups of 3, a group of 4, 2 groups of 3, a group of 4. Give it a go. A little bit easier to follow. It still takes a little practice, but yeah. Or you can not and just feel it, because honestly, because again,
But it was really cool to watch all of you. I could see you mouthing
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
This is extremely advanced. So if you guys are following this, give yourself a pat on the back, honestly, that's cool. You can really just kind of feel this stuff too, because again, your ear can process this stuff usually a lot faster than your brain can. Because our brains are very analytical and we want to know why everything is doing with it, but you don't really need to know why. You kind of feel it. That's why you're sometimes able to do musical things that you don't necessarily.
We'll take questions at the end.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe we have 10 minutes. All right, this is my favorite example of this is my jam, as the kids say. So now what's cool is normally diatonically to a minor scale, or a minor key rather, the 6th chord is going to be a major chord. So typically it would be an uppercase major 6, and that would be our tonic substitute, our 6th chord. So Grant Kirkhope's really cool, just in general, but also because he understands chromatic mediant chords. That's when you flat the 6th chord and you pretty much make it a minor chord instead. It makes it way spookier, in fact. So do you have an example of, you have the example, you don't have what it would sound like without it. But, all right, so here we are, we're in 1 minor, easy. What then? That's cool, right? It almost feels like it's a different key. I mean, you can argue. Sure. Yeah. We can argue it goes to G minor there, but no.
One measure.
Yeah. We would want to describe this as in the key of B minor, and then it goes to that chord, which just so happens to be a flat 6 minor chord. Which, that again, that's a really cool, you hear that a lot in horror music and stuff like that. That's kind of what gives it that feeling. The reason why these chords sound the way they do is because the notes that are the composition of those chords tend to have a lot more dissonance to the key.
And dissonance doesn't always mean sounding bad.
Yeah.
Dissonance means...
Yeah, it does.
It just means crunch. It means crunch.
Yeah.
Crunch.
Crunch. All right,
All right,
this is mine.
Here's another
Yeah.
example.
So if you don't know Chrono Trigger...
What are you doing?
So what's really cool about Chrono Trigger is the main theme. There's a lot of debate about the key and the functionality of it. So we start in A minor, and then we have this F sharp minor 7 chord with a sharp... Oh, no, that's 6. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But then we borrowed this F major from the relative major of C major. Yeah, it's a lot even for me. And then we get a minor 5. Minor 5, if we haven't even talked about it, that shows you how rare it really is. It's like a 1% thing. It's not really used commonly because it takes away that leading tone that creates all that tension where we're like,
1%, all the money goes to that one chord.
that one minor 5.
And the middle class
So,
just
yeah.
gets nothing.
There's chromatic medians, there's modal interchange. It's really cool. Just listen to it.
Yeah. Same feeling, same energy. Wow. Whoa! It's like a roller coaster.
I love
That's pretty epic.
if you look at the middle staff, you can see over the F sharp minor chord, that part is playing literally an A major chord in the key of A minor. So that's kind of freaky.
Yeah. With how it's voiced.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have like 5 minutes for questions.
I just got that. Yeah, so we've got 5 minutes. But do you guys have any like questions that we might be able to answer and stuff? Yeah, what's up?
So when you're creating music, how consciously do you think about this?
We should just add this to the panel because I
Yeah,
think
we
like every
should.
single panel we get asked this. So we asked, when we're making music, how conscious are we of music theory? And I think all of us probably have a different answer for this.
Probably.
Yeah.
What do you got, Ben?
I'm very conscious of it because I'm not a good composer, I would say. I think a lot of great composers follow their ears, and they'll have a certain sound in mind that they want to, follow, and they'll kind of experiment till they get it. And I really have zero compositional instinct, which is why I got so into music theory, because you don't need compositional instinct, because you can just steal stuff from other songs like we were talking about. But so for me, I use it a ton.
I think I'm pretty similar in terms of extremely analytical. I think it's useful to analyze. To know it super well, to analyze other people's music, and then, like Jules said, steal and put that in your own. But also know that there is a time where you just have to let the analytical part of your brain turn off and just create, and then modify after.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing like a gradient here, because like what I do is I usually try for the most part to just do it by feel, kind of just like just kind of like do whatever comes naturally to me, and if it sounds good, like don't question it. But I usually use it kind of as like the game facts, like the strategy guide. Like when I'm stuck, like when I'm like clipping into a boulder, or like and I need like a reset, and I'm just like I have no idea what to do. I'll go back, I'll figure out what chords I wrote, and then be like, okay, well we can go to a chromatic median here or something like that.
For me, I do a lot of just straight transcription work for covers, and so like I kind of subconsciously thinking a lot about music theory, but if something stands out while I'm transcribing, I'm like, wait, how do we get from here to here? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, and then that's where I stop my tracks for like 4 hours and try and figure out how we got from where to where. So
also, like if I did a shot for every time somebody told me like I don't want to learn music theory because it's going to take away the feeling, like I'd be an alcoholic.
Lies.
And well, it's just like what it ends up being is it's just a tool. It's like part of your arsenal. Like even if you know everything, like you're not gonna be like if everything you do has like no feel in all music theory. That's like I don't know, going to Berkeley. Oh. I'm kidding. No, but you know what I mean? Like Carlos is, some of the best feel out of, most of the people I know, so because he knows when to use the music theory and when to not. You should use this stuff as a toolbox, as like a weapon in your musical arsenal. And that's usually typically how it, integrates into your musicality.
Another question?
Another one?
Jared?
Jared, what up?
So I am looking at trying to create some like original compositions. What are some tools you recommend for learning this type of thing? Like, and not just at this panel, of course, but like what are some of the tools that helped you to figure out these things?
College.
So what I like to think about with composition, and I go through this with students a lot, is because we just talk to you for an hour about here's functions and they make you feel this way, which are really important. Again, it's a situational thing when to use them, but like trying to think of like your own original music, I often just try not to overthink it. I just sing something and notate it out, and if it sounds good, I'm like, yay, and if it doesn't, I'm like, all right, well, let's reassess. But I think like starting with the chord progression could be like very detrimental because it just boxes you in from the get-go. So you just got to think very broad, I think, at the beginning, but then use these tools to kind of help check. And if, create something, if you're struggling, you can fall back on your 4-5-1 or something.
Yep. That and
Trust your ears.
Yeah, trust your ears for for sure. But I figure like you guys are here. You guys don't want to hear us tell you to trust your ears. So musictheory.net has a lot of really cool quizzes, the ways that you can kind of understand. Like we don't talk about the circle of fifths here, which is a very important part of composition. Like imagine if we talked about that, everyone would like leave. But it is important. The circle of fifths is good, and musictheory.net has a way that you can kind of like quiz yourself on that, as well as chord notation, all sorts of stuff. There's an app for it. I think it's called like Tenuto or
Tenuto, yeah.
Oh. And that's good. If you just kind of want to like start learning some of this stuff and then have like a little app on your phone to quiz yourself, that's pretty fun.
Probably one more.
Yeah, one more question. Fight to the death. No fight to the. Okay, fight for smash.
All right.
Let's smash for it.
He said
Smash
he
ultimate.
won.
What? All right. Yeah. What up?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, in terms of secondary dominant, I know there is usually a 5-up and a 7-up.
Yes.
When you do that, when would you use either?
Honestly, I don't think of them as any different from each other. They're the exact same.
I feel like
That's
5
the
is a little
jazz
bit
approach.
more digestible, typically.
I
7
think-
sounds a little crunchy. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Ben. Sorry.
To me, the 7 of something is just an inversion of the 5 of something.
Yeah.
The 7 diminished chord is derived from the 5-7 chord. So they're really basically the same.
Again, like a lot of the notes are similar. That's kind of like what he's saying. Like inversions just mean you're playing the same chord with the notes kind of swapped around. Like typically so if you have a D minor chord, D is usually in the bass, right? But if the D is not in the bass, one of the other notes, that's going to be an inverted chord. It sounds slightly different, and that's kind of the way that Carlos thinks about it, since the notes are so similar. Yeah.
Yep.
I think we're good.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much
Thank
for being
you
for
so
being
much.
interested in this. I appreciate you guys.